recorded, so I'm starting our recording now. Ready? The recording is live. The live stream is live. We're all the way live. And tonight is our, what is this, third professional development seminar of the 2023-2024 program year for our Poet Artist Development Program. I definitely want to congratulate those of you who are here tonight joining in on Zoom and anybody joining in on our live stream or watching this afterwards. I'm glad that you're interested in learning how to turn your interest in the arts as an emerging artist into a potential career. As I mentioned to those of you enrolled in the program, tonight's session is our artist project development session. But we are going to also actually cover some, like a quick little review of what we covered last month. And last month, for those who might remember, it was all about the artist as a business owner. It was kind of, developing the mindset of what it means to be an artist. Today's session is going to go through that and then some. So we might as well get this going. Of course, for anybody watching afterwards and curious about our programs and what DSTL Arts is, DSTL Arts is a nonprofit arts mentorship organization that inspires, teaches, and hires emerging artists from underserved communities. Our name, DSTL Arts, it is an acronym. It stands for Develop Skills and Transcend Limits Through the Arts. And it really is our belief that as artists, we can be change makers and that we all have something that is worth really exploring and developing as individuals. We can make an impact in our lives and in our world, in our communities through the arts. Therefore, develop skills and transcend limits really kind of, speaks to that idea, to that concept. And as mentioned before, to quickly review one of the core things that we talked about last month in last month's seminar, we were talking about these three general concepts, right? When it comes to having the mindset of a business owner. Because whether you are an independent artist or you're working for someone, there's always the need to assign value to your work. And when we say assign value to your work, it's not just a way of thinking about what to charge. It's a way to think about also why it's important and why you have the right really to ask for whatever wage you feel is appropriate for your particular practice. When you assign value to your work, it is based on various things, including your time and experience. And that does mean also, how long you went to school, if you have an advanced degree in a particular practice, if you've done additional trainings outside of your regular, high school experience, or whatever the case might be. Like all of those things and all of the work that you have put into developing your skills, those are all things that can add value to your particular arts practice. And again, that just reinforces the idea of skill. The more time and experience you have doing something, generally speaking, the more your skills will develop. Therefore, you can begin to slowly increase your asking price for your services, ultimately. It's also really important to consider equipment and supplies. There are certain things that as artists we do require, and we need to be able to offset the cost, the expense of those things through our asking price. And then again, as an artist, you are ultimately working 5 different types of jobs within one single job. That is, basically, marketing, development, the social media manager for your own campaigns. All of that stuff is going to play a big role in how you present your work to the world. It's also worth investing in a website, a good, solid website, one that is easy to navigate and easy to really get a sense of what your work is and who you are. Social media is obviously a tool that we can all use to, leverage our context, to promote ourselves, all of those things. And even in this social media focused age, it's still worth it to invest in physical marketing materials too. So flyers, postcards, business cards, all of those things actually do still make a difference when it comes to marketing. All of the marketing stuff we will talk about more next month. We're going to go more in depth on that. Today's session is really more about just how do you begin the process of planning for a project, and not just any project, but it could be a project that is either a long-term project, a short-term project. One of the ways in which you might end up, generating revenue to support yourself as an artist, but this is going to be something that you can apply not just to a single project, but to your overall life as an artist, as a working artist. So we're really going to be doing more of a deep dive in the budgetary sense today. And again, all of these things that you do in terms of planning will in some way answer one of these three questions. What are you good at? What does the world need? And what do you love to do? Because in the end, that is really what your business is trying to answer for the rest of the world. It's explaining your business, your mission statement, all of that stuff is explaining what you're good at. It's attempting to fill a need that the world has. And it's also going to be something that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it as your career. Abraham claims to be the Nike of the art world, looks like. But it is kind of a way for you to develop your own sense of identity, right? You treat your artwork, you treat your practice as a brand, and it will eventually become something recognizable. So let's begin with our typical quote of the week, quote of the day. This comes from Christina Halverson, specifically from her book, Content Strategy for the Web. Christina Halverson is an American writer, entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster, and expert on the subject of content strategy. And she is the founder and CEO of Brain Traffic. Do I have a volunteer that might want to read the quote for us? That make me have to call on you. Let's see. How about...
I'll read it.
All right. Thank you, Roots.
It says quality, relevant content can't be spotted by an algorithm. You can't subscribe to it. You need people, actual human beings, to create or curate it.
Right. Thank you, Roots. I appreciate you taking one for the team. So, what does this quote say to you? How do you interpret this? Now remember, there's no right or wrong answer. Today's session is also going to be pretty participatory, especially after the first few slides. So, it's okay for you to unmute yourself and jump into the conversation. But what does this particular quote say to you? Well, to me, yes, Abraham?
Sorry, my cable is a little stuck here. Cool. So it comes to what are the things that we as humans can offer. And I think it's the human experience, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what connects us to other humans, right? So in order to create something that other people is gonna respond to, you have to think as the person, as your experience dictates, and that is gonna connect with people.
I like that. Yeah. I think the first thing that came to my mind as you were speaking, Abraham, and you were talking about you need, the human experience. AI is a big concern for a lot of people now. It's something that's in some ways making artwork a little more accessible to the person that doesn't consider themselves an artist. But in the end, you still need artists, right? You still need human people who can actually, you need human beings who can speak to the human experience. I don't think that that's something that AI could ever fully understand or fully present to the world. Evan wrote in the chat, I think it speaks to the human touch that is required in making something relatable. Yeah, exactly. It's about the concept of the human experience, the human condition, and how we're able to effectively communicate that as artists. Right? And Jamie wrote, I think it's saying that recognizing quality, relevant content requires another human being. And that's probably true as well, because not only do you need, a human being to be able to articulate what it is to be human, you also need an audience member who can understand the core, the basics of the human experience. So yeah, it's kind of a reciprocal thing. And when you create something that is relevant to an individual, in one form or another relevant, right? Because it could be something that maybe me as a man of color, I might not be able to understand it, but if it speaks to something human, something relatable, then, I will still be able to consume it as a consumer. Yeah, Jamie adds, because ultimately you are speaking out to other humans with your content. That's right. Doesn't matter who you are, what your cultural background is, what your experiences might be, if there is something inherently human in the content that we're consuming, it's going to speak to us. Evan?
Can you hear me? I've been having issues with my mic.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. I also think like computers and AI and algorithm can make logical connections, but they don't have the understanding to make emotional connections.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's in a lot of ways what we're probably trying to get at, is that effective art, again, there's no such thing as good or bad art. It's effective, right? And it's effective because of the human and emotional connection that it's able to make with an audience member, with a consumer of that particular content. And I think you bring up a great point. Algorithms, AI, all of that work based on logic, but it doesn't necessarily work based on real feelings. And so that is where ultimately we need to have that human touch. Abraham?
That kind of reminds me of this thing. I think it's parasocial relationships, which is kind of, I think, when you get attached to people on a TV show that you never know, or most likely you're not going to have the chance to talk to them, but when they're on TV, you feel like you know them, you have that connection. And I think that differentiates that with the kind of, when you get like these scams that comes through your Instagram and somebody's like, oh, you want to be this ambassador for this and that, like that, you can clearly see that's copy and paste. There's not a human behind, right? So it's that kind of connection that you feel like, oh, I understand the point or the feelings that you're feeling. And that way you get that connection that otherwise you wouldn't have from other, I guess, machine, if you think about it.
Yeah. That's, I think, another good thing to maybe kind of make a connection with, right, is the fact that we form these social connections with sometimes things or people that we don't know in real life, but they're going to be part of our culture, our internal culture, if you want to think of it in that way. And it becomes, in some ways, an influence on the way that we respond to other things. And I think Mojde does bring up a good question of, who does create these algorithms? What is an algorithm going to do for us that, the human side of us can't? And in the end, I don't think that there's a real way to answer that question without just understanding that, an algorithm is really just kind of like a series of logic, like, what is the term? I can't even think of the mathematical term of it, but there are like these logic sequences. It's like an equation. Thank you, Abraham, where it's going to either give you something because it thinks it's what you like, with very minimal logic behind it, with very minimal effort behind it. And is it going to feed you just what it thinks you want, or is it going to be something that you can genuinely connect with? So yeah, there's a whole lot to be said, I think, about the web and content creation and that kind of thing. Let's see, what does Jamie say here? It can definitely technically do a lot more than humans, but again, the quote did say quality, right? It's about quality, relevant content. So it goes back in some ways to the questions that we were asking earlier. What is it that the world needs? What is it that you're good at? And what is it that in some ways you are capable of creating as well? Because that does play into how you develop a project, an artist project. So let's answer that question for ourselves, right? What is an artist project? Let's give ourselves at least a simple definition here as we discuss this. So the short answer, it's a deliverable product for a particular audience. When we talk about projects, at least in the context of today's session, we're talking about something that you can deliver. And, there's going to be some elements of this that translate over to a larger business practice. This can also be used kind of like at the micro level in talking about maybe like the publishing of a book or putting together an art show, that kind of thing. But in the end, the long answer is that this is going to be a well-planned undertaking that has clearly defined goals, both before, during, and after the project. And when we're talking about projects and goals or goal setting for a project, it's really a strategy to help make sure that you execute it. We're not going to go into how do you actually execute a project, because that's kind of the reason why you're developing one to begin with, right? Because it's something that you can do. And you more than likely know you can create a zine. You know that you can create a performance, set it up, do that kind of thing and execute it. That's why you're the artist. You're the one creating the content. But to get to that point where you can deliver the content to your audience, it really does help to have some sort of strategy to get you to that point, especially when you consider the second point that I have here. Not only are you defining your goals, but you're also establishing your assets and your needs. Because let's face it, being an artist is sometimes the thing that we do because we have to. It's a poet is always going to poet, I like to say. An artist is always going to create art. But sometimes, it's going to be a challenge because we don't maybe have the funding to get it done. Maybe we don't have the supplies yet. And we are going to overcome those challenges by maybe doing an alternative, like using an alternative medium, a different kind of paint than what is maybe traditionally used. You might paint on cardboard as opposed to canvas because that's what you have accessible to you, right? And that's when an artist really begins to get creative about their assets and, can in some ways define what their needs are to then turn around and ask for the funding that is necessary to complete their projects. Evaluation also plays a big part in this. And this is one of the things that oftentimes gets overlooked, right? It's really useful to evaluate as you go, both before you get started on a project, during a project. How well is it coming along? Is there something else that you can address as you're executing the project? So evaluation is going to happen regularly as you're developing any kind of project, whether it's setting up a reading or attending a zine fest. You're always going to be working out little kinks here and there, and that comes through evaluation. But we're going to do a bit more of a deep dive here. So hold on to your pants. Number one, define the project goals. In my experience, this is going to be a series of questions that you ask yourself. The purpose of your project is something that you really want to define early on. And the question is, how will you get there? There's a little bit of overlap in terms of the establishing of your assets and your needs, but you can always begin with something like a theme, right? What is the theme of your project? If you need to answer that question for yourself, you can do it as a mission statement. If you remember our lesson from last month, we talked about mission statements. We talked about a vision for you as an artist and that kind of thing. It's something that you could probably articulate in 1 to 2 sentences. Think of, the moment where you find yourself at a dinner party or in an elevator and somebody asks you, well, what do you do? What are you working on right now? That could be that quick little thing that you shoot off to say, this is what I'm up to these days. Also, it's really, really important early on to define for yourself how you plan to present your project. If it's going to be a publication, what format is it going to take? Is it an ebook? Is it a zine? Is it a more formal, coffee table book? Those are things that you want to ask yourself, and work from there, work backwards as you start setting up your goals for achieving that format. If it's a digital platform, digital presentation, what platform are you using? Is this long term? Is it short term? These are the kinds of questions that you want to ask yourself very early on. And then, of course, there's always going to be the audience, right? Who is the audience that this is for? Who is this going to inspire or speak to? As you develop your audience, this is going to be an audience that will potentially stick with you, stay by your side your entire career because they just love your approach to illustration, or they love your form of comedy, whatever the case might be. And then, of course, when do you plan to reveal your final product? Setting that timeline for yourself is going to be really useful the earlier you do it, because in my experience, if we don't have those deadlines for ourselves, we're just going to sit there and just, say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or, it'll happen in a few months, and a few months go by and then nothing. So timelines are also very important as part of your project goals. And like I said, part of this is establishing your assets and your needs. And most people don't like to think of, your resources as being people. But time is definitely a resource. We all spend a lot of hours doing things that sometimes we don't want to do. I can speak for myself in saying that every single week I spend at least 20 to 25 hours working on either administrative tasks, budgeting, a lot of emails and that kind of thing that I just, really would rather not do. I'd much rather spend my time creating art, whether it be editing photos or writing poetry, maybe working on my next book. I'd much rather be working on those things, but time is a limited resource that we all have. And sometimes we have to allocate time as a resource to certain tasks that will ultimately get us to our final goal. People are also resources, whether it be a mentor, a friend, a therapist, someone that is there to help guide you or to help listen to you as you struggle through things, or to give you advice. Those are resources that we oftentimes undervalue and underestimate in their importance. It's almost as important as time and money, because in the end, it's how we keep ourselves sane. It's how we just propel ourselves forward in the development of a project or an arts practice. So remember that people can be a resource for you as well. And then, of course, there's the finances. The way in which you can look at all of these and assess whether it's an asset or it's something that you need, it's going to be very similar to how we say, this is how much money I have in the bank. This is what I have left over at the end of the month. It sometimes can be as simple as that. When we're talking about people, it could be, your support networks. If you're part of a writer's circle or an editor's group, maybe they would be willing to look at your manuscript and say, oh yeah, you can make some changes here. This is working really well. Keep doing that. And of course, money, is always a big one, right? We're always saying, if I was rich, if I had all the money in the world, I'd be able to do X, Y, and Z. You can still accomplish a lot sometimes without all of it, but it's still going to be very useful to be able to say, okay, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I have, and this is what I need to fundraise for. And so as you think about, your various resources that are available to you, it's very, very useful to look at a budget. And it's also really important that you ask yourself this question: does your budget reflect the full cost of production? And this is something that we're going to really cover in a moment here. So before we move on, does anyone have any questions or comments about anything that I've covered so far? It's quite a bit of buildup, but I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on where we're at and what we're talking about. All right, let's continue on then. In the previous slide, I did talk about, working with other people. If you're going to work with other people, it's really, really important that you set up contracts and MOUs. Memorandum of Understanding is what MOU stands for. But in the end, both of these items, both of these things are a way for you to protect yourself as an artist, financially, and in some cases, even legally. So a contract, the difference between the two is that a contract can more clearly outline the terms for licensed intellectual property, meaning, the work that you create can be better defined in how people can use it or how you will use it, and who is the owner of it. So that's generally how you would use a contract when you're partnering with someone. A memorandum of understanding is really more a way of delineating who is responsible for what. So it can be used for things like I wrote here, cost sharing arrangements that include rent, utilities, or other expenses that are shareable, like, I don't know, renting a copy machine or, anything related to presenting or a co-working space. That's where a memorandum of understanding can be very useful. And again, this is something that we'll go into a bit more later in another seminar, but that is because I do mention it in the last slide. It is something that is part of this one as well. So one of the ways in which I learned budgeting as an administrator, as a nonprofit administrator, and even just like for my own personal use, I learned very early on in my life that a budget is a moral document. And when we say that a budget is a moral document, I mean that it is a document that shows to you and the rest of the world what you really put the most value in. We're talking about literal value, right? Where do you put your money when it comes time to really walk the walk? So if you are, say, underpaying yourself, it goes back to what we were saying before. If you're assigning a lower value to your work, it could be a way in which people will say, oh, well, you don't really value yourself, your work. Why should I value it higher? So, a budget, again, is a moral document, and you could really look at that and apply that to, budgets for cities, local governments, the federal government. You could look at that in, like, say, the nonprofit sector. You can look at that, in the corporate world. Look at where the majority of the money is spent, and that'll tell you exactly what they value more than anything else. So this is where it's going to get a little bit more interactive. As a group, we're going to plan a project, and we're giving you 3 options here. The first option could be either tabling at a zine fest or a book festival. We have like the LA Times Festival of Books that's coming up in April. So, that could be an opportunity for you to start practicing budgeting for a festival. We also have organizing a 5-stop reading or lecture series. So for anybody that is interested in presenting work, we can, as a group, work on setting up a budget for a very short little lecture series or reading series. Or as a group, we can organize an art show, be it photography or visual, painting, art, that kind of thing. You have your choice. Does anyone have a specific preference right now? Which project do you all want to work on together as a team? First choice, drop it in the chat. Okay, Zine Fest. Got 1 vote for Zine Fest. Anyone else? All right, that's 2 votes, 3 votes. All right, 3 votes for a Zine Fest. All right, 4 votes for the Zine Fest. Excellent. All right, so here's what we're going to do then. We are going to use this bad boy right here. Hopefully you're able to see that okay. We're going to use this artist budget. Oh, that's a little bit too big now. Let's go to 125%. There we go. All right. So we're going to use this working artists operating budget. This is a template. It has some formulas in it that you can use and see actually live as we update information. We're going to start off with the simple part, right? We're going to plan for the event. And as an example, I have provided you here on this particular handout a little sample projection sheet. This is, as you can see here, for really developing merchandise. And this is a variety of different kinds of printed material, from like your own zines and booklets to pins, patches, photo prints or art prints, that kind of thing. So this is an example, and these are a couple of years old now. So these prices are probably not 100% accurate anymore, given that inflation has caused a lot of things to go up in value. But if you're going to be doing it at home, kind of the DIY, as an example, we have like inkjet printer inks. You might be spending about $100 a year on that. So, we're going to have that $100 there. You might need to replace your inks about 5 times a year. Therefore, that is the total cost. If we are going to do it maybe a lot more, right, and we're doing it 10 times a year, you'll see here that cost went up. So again, this is an example, and this is a way in which you can start generating your ideas for a Zine Fest. There's a couple of other tabs on this particular handout. So when you download it from Google Classroom, you can actually use this same template as a way for you to develop a specific project. But each one of these tabs, you got project number 1, a project number 2, and a project number 3. Each one of these is linked to the full operating budget here. This operating budget is set up to show you your annual cost, your monthly, and your weekly cost. And when we scroll all the way down, hopefully this doesn't make you too dizzy as I scroll. When you scroll all the way down here, this field right here, this where it says 0 currently, that is going to automatically populate using all 3 of these tabs here combined. So you can develop, say, up to 3 different projects or programs. If you want to go more the programming route, you can develop your supply list and your printing list specifically with these 3 tabs, and then you will see it again fully reflected here. Right now we have $500 under venue rental, so that could be how much you maybe spend a year on renting a specific space for offering one of your programs. But what we're going to do right now, using this actual spreadsheet right here, not the sample one, is we're going to do just the one event, right? So we had talked about doing a Zine Fest. So for our project description, this is going to be, let's say, attending the 2024 LA Zine Fest. All right. What are some of our goals for attending the Zine Fest? This is always useful to add. So what kind of goals would you want to achieve if you were attending a Zine Fest next year? Where are your investments going to be prioritized? Catching them all. We're talking about a Zine Fest, not a Pokemon, Abraham.
All the attendees.
All the attendees.
Invest.
Okay.
So I think one of the main goals would be not only getting the interest of people attending, but also some form of capturing their data so that we can reach out to them again in the future with future commissions and sale opportunities.
There you go. Get that, Richard, already thinking like a businessman. Yeah, you want to capture, we'll call it contact information, right? For adding to a newsletter, we'll keep it as something as simple as that. Networking is for sure part of that. Building the listserv, yeah, that's another way to call it. Thank you, Dorothea. Involving all ages. All right, so we want to have interest from, we'll say, an all ages demographic. Get donations. Okay, so you want to get donations. All right, capture donations. Anything else? Any other particular goals that we want to include in this particular event's happening? Abraham?
I guess because we have a couple of things regarding sales and money, might as well put a number that you guys think you want to come out above cost. What is the profit that you're planning? I think that will be a good number. I don't know, up to you guys what you want to earn that day.
So I saw a YouTube video recently about a guy detailing setting up his booth at DragonCon, and his goal was to sell 3 times as much compared to what his costs were.
All right. So 3 times the retail price, right?
Correct. Yeah. 3 times the gross retail income. Hey Siri, stop. Of compared to what his costs were.
Got it. Okay. So sell 3 times the gross retail price of the zine expenses, we'll call it. All right. I think that is a very healthy and manageable goal for any type of event that you might attend, right? You not only want to be able to cover the cost of attending the event and the cost of all of the supplies that are necessary for you to create the materials that you're going to be selling, but you should also be accounting for how much your time is worth. That's something that we'll talk a little bit more about later too, but that is a very good goal. Right, and I think we have a good variety of goals there. So we'll go ahead and move on. When it comes to setting up for a zine fest, right? One thing that we know, at least from personal experience, is that the LA Zine Fest will provide you with a table and they will provide you with a chair. And that is probably it. If we are going for a half table, meaning half of a 6-foot long table, so you have like a little 3-foot by maybe 3-foot area, that's going to potentially limit how many zines you can display, but that doesn't mean that you can't bring more. So we know for at least the cost of the admission, you'll get a table and you'll get a chair. So those are assets that we do not have to necessarily pay for. Yes, Abraham?
Yeah, what you were saying is like, if you got a big table, you can present more stuff. So the
Mhm.
question you will have to figure out before you get it is how much material do you want to expose?
Yeah.
Like if you have a big inventory, maybe the full table will be for you. If you
Mhm.
have a smaller inventory, which most of them that are the ones we see because they're self-published outdoors, they have a couple of books.
Mhm.
So that will be probably half a table.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's work off of the assumption that we're getting a half table. It's our first time going to a zine fest. If we are able to, we might have one zine, one full-sized zine. And we'll go with maybe the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper folded in half type of zine. Does everybody kind of get what I'm talking about? Yeah. All right. I got some affirmations there. Okay. So if we're going to be creating a single zine for a half table, we can already put down on here our project specific supplies is going to be the half table. Let's see, half table vendor fee. And we're only going to be doing one, right? We only are paying for ourselves. It says items needed, and this could be annually. It could also be, sorry, wrong spot. It could be just for the one-time use. Also, with my experience with the LA Zine Fest, they have been slowly increasing the cost of their vendor fees. For a full table last year, it was $150. I believe a half table was exactly half of that, which would be $75. So as you can see here, it automatically added it for us. And if we continue down, you'll see that it's automatically adding it here. So we're already $75 into our expenses. What else are we going to need in order to be able to have a zine ready to go for the LA Zine Fest? And go ahead and start shooting off your ideas of, what it is that we want to include as part of this particular project.
The actual inventory, the main inventory.
Yeah,
the
so
zine.
the zine, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, how many you're bringing and how much they cost to produce, and
Yeah.
perhaps shipping. I don't know how much gonna cost.
Yeah. So give me some ideas here. Where do we go for these things, and how much are we spending? I see in the chat, Jamie added, we need our branding and signage and such. Okay, yeah, we do need that. Where are we going to go get that? That would be a printing expense, we'll call it. So signage. Actually, let me go ahead and write that in. Signage. What kind of signage are we talking about? Handmade posters. We need to start to get a little bit more specific here.
I would suggest a professionally printed of some kind so that you could drape it over the table without needing extra support. You wouldn't need any additional banner hangy thingies. And also you could fold it up and use it at future events as well.
All right. So we're talking about probably like a vinyl poster.
Yeah,
Awesome.
vinyl. And just to add out what Richard's saying, the only problem with using the table, well, unless you let it drip on the bottom, but I think my suggestion is to actually have like a thing to hold it, like an actual specific thing. So you can use that other space to like put stuff on.
Mhm. The poster that I got for DSTL Arts, or the banner, I should say. Yeah, you can also hang stuff behind you. That's true too, depending on the space. The poster that I got is well, it's a small banner. It's like about a 4-foot banner. And I remember spending approximately $25 on it. So that would be, I would say, probably the average price for a semi-professional grade vinyl poster. Because it's reusable, as Richard has noted, we'll probably only need to buy it once. Yeah, it is relatively inexpensive. It's not, you know, super pricey for that type of signage. As long as no one does anything to it, right? Exactly. As long as it's you know, not vandalized. Okay. How many zines are we going to print? Anybody want to give us a number? Under printing expenses. Remember, one of our goals is 3 times. We're going to try to earn 3 times the retail price of them. What's a reasonable amount? That is a very good question. I think it kind of comes down to what we're talking about in terms of printing. If it's going to be color, and this is going to be a handmade one, you know, a handmade color zine, if you go to like Office Depot, color is, if I remember correctly, about 25 cents a page. That's front and back, and that can be kind of expensive. So, you know, 25 cents, and let's say we do a zine that is maybe about 8 sheets of paper, double-sided. What is that? 25 times 8. We're talking about $2 per zine, not including the cover and not including our time. But $2, you know, it's not too bad. So let's go with that, right? We're going to estimate about $2 per printed zine. If you want to do 100, as I've seen in the chat so far, we're talking about $200 in printing. Just the zine by itself. Yes, Abraham?
Sorry, quick suggestion. Since we are also having the banner, I noticed, because we have had that experience with different places, to get something to draw attention, to buy either a cool toy, or like in the case of Luis, that he has a cool printer, a typewriter, something to bring attention. It's always good to have in your table. So if you need to spend on that, put it in. The X factor.
Yeah, the X factor. The cute stuff, as Jamie calls it, the decorations. Yeah. That's one possible thing to add here.
And with that, we can lead to merchandise.
Yeah. So what are we going to buy for decorations then? You know, not only do we have to obviously come prepared with our zines and stuff. We have a zine, we have a sign, a little banner maybe. We've paid for the tabling fee. What other things are we going to have? What other things are we going to invest in that we maybe don't have already?
Question: in this hypothetical scenario,
Yeah.
Is our logo already designed?
Sure. Yeah. In this hypothetical, we could just keep it as DIY as possible. It could be a hand-drawn thing or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Some type of business card or QR code. That is a good one. Is that something that we want to add? Do we want to have a business card? Yes, stands or other things to display the zines too, for sure. So let's go ahead and add the business card. Business cards. QR codes you can actually create for free. And this is also going to be assuming that you already have a website set up. So business cards for 1,000. Let me add this here. So 1,000 card print run. In my experience, 1,000 card print run has cost me approximately $65. That is full color front and back. So there's that. And then I see again the stands. Okay. So we'll call them display stands. So something very simple, like a picture frame type of stand. Any kind of, let's see, how many are we going to buy? Let's start there. And again, assuming we have a 3-foot table, 3 to 4 feet table.
Just to confirm, are we talking about a mini stand or a full size stand that would go behind the table?
This will probably be a tabletop one. So let me
Yeah,
amend this.
I think maybe you could only, from what I've seen, you could only get one, maybe two, that would fit on a table that size.
Yeah. So yeah, that would probably be enough to, somebody walks up, they pick one up. There's still another one there. So another person could come up and pick it up too, or take a look at it. Let's see, what is this? Yeah, that's a very long link, but without going to the website, how much is that particular stand there?
It says 35.
$350?
35.
Oh, $35. Okay.
It's a big one. It has like a 6 spaces for different things.
Okay.
But I think you can get the single scene one because we only have one scene in this scenario, right?
Yeah.
So one of those, I think they're like $3 to $4. The ones you fold, the black ones, the small ones. So they're not that expensive. You need 2 of those, and the rest of the scenes you just lay them out.
Yeah. Yeah, let's try to be as cost effective as we can be. So yeah, let's say we're going to allocate maybe $5 to include tax, right? So small tabletop displays, and we're going to do 2 of them, so $10. I've seen like little packs of them, by the way, at Blick art supply store for like about I think it's like a 3-pack for about $8. So 2 of them at $5 is probably also for the small ones.
Yes.
Like the really cheap ones.
Because we said it's 9.5 by 11 folded scene,
Yeah.
right? So should be the good stuff for that.
Yeah. So that's good there. I appreciate the Googling going on here. It's always good to use real world figures as well. So let's see what else. Yeah, keep it going. What else do we need? I think I saw someone mention something along the lines of stuff for the table. Let's assume that we don't have a tablecloth. All right, so we might want to have our table look nice. So we'll add a tablecloth. We'll only need one for sure.
It's better to use a cloth instead of the other materials because you can reuse it.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well invest in a good one.
Yeah. The last time I bought one, I think I paid about $15 at Target. And again, that's a reusable one. So, yeah. What other kinds of decorations for the table are we taking with us? If this were your particular table, what might you bring?
So again, this goes back to what you have.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of just adding up or just adding it, but knowing that it's going to be free for you, right? Like, let's say you have a stuffed animal that's probably $30-$40 that you want to put on the table, but you have it, you just save yourself that much money, right? It's like the resources that you have.
Right. Yeah. So it could be that, right? It could be,
Mhm.
other resources, which we can add over here in the blank spots.
Yeah,
These
I'm
are
in
the
the
things that we're actually spending on though. Go ahead, Richard.
I was just gonna say I'm in the same boat as Abraham. I would just pull any kind of cutesy bric-a-brac around my apartment for attracting people, luring them in.
Yeah.
But if we're only looking at stuff that we would spend money on, I don't know if this event is indoors or outdoors, but if it's indoors, a cute little trick is getting like little Hershey's Kisses and sprinkling them around the table. So
That's good. That's definitely something that you would have to buy. So candies. Let's assume that we are going to allocate maybe $10 for one large bag of I don't know, Dum Dums or Tootsie Roll Pops. All right. Those tend to be the cheaper ones. And that's probably not the biggest bag in the world for $10, but yeah, you could also bring a tip jar. There's nothing that says that you can't, right? One of our goals is to capture donations. So we'll add that as a thing that we are bringing. Tip jar. I like the idea of a small plant. That is a good one. Yeah, I mean, you could bring in info about DSTL Arts. You can always add that. Let's assume this is your event, though, right? You're the one that's paying for this. What else would you bring?
So now we go to the merch. Let's say you want to sell stickers. Luis, what's a good number for a small run of stickers?
That is a good question. So using Sticker Robot, which is one of the cheapest vinyl printing, or sorry, screen printed stickers, like companies that I've been able to find online. Sticker Robot has, I believe, a minimum order of 250 screen printed stickers that are approximately 1 inch in size. If we are going to do stickers, and let's say we have our logo or our design already prepared, we would probably be looking at about I think if I remember right, it's probably like about $300 for a 250 sticker print run.
So I am checking the website, and like a 2x2 sticker, and the number of basically the quantity 250, but I guess we can reduce it to that's the minimum. Never mind. The minimum is 250, and the price for that is $134.
Okay.
And that's
so
a 2x2. So just to keep it on this. I think this is the least cost one. Because after that you can go crazy with that.
They might have changed their pricing then too.
Yeah.
But okay, see, real world figures, right? 2x2 stickers, 250 print run. We're doing one print run, $134. We also probably need to add in shipping. So so let's add that in as well. I don't know. That's probably going to be like about $30 in shipping.
I just had a thought. Do those prices include tax? Do they need to include tax?
They probably should include tax. Yeah. So, with the like printing stuff, these things, that's probably going to be accurate in terms of taxes. The more accurate you can be in your final budget, the better. At this point, we're just kind of estimating just to keep it simple. But yes, you do want to include taxes when you're doing a budget. Sales taxes and shipping.
Another cool thing to consider is like your sticker, for example, you can put cool stuff, but if you added some of like your website or your code your code over there, you can save yourself the money that you are going to use on the business cards.
This is true. This is true. It might, cost you the extra money, but think of it as an investment, right? So if we're going to do those added things, this 134 might not be, 134 anymore. It might jump up to like 150 because you're doing that extra add-on. But if it's going to pay off in the end, it's not bad.
Yeah, because you can, for example, your sticker is gonna be a little more because of the space, but you can probably take the cost of the business card and just put it on the stickers.
Yeah. So you reallocate that $65 to the stickers, and you could potentially offset it. Right. And for the record, at this point, we're at $564 already spent on preparing for our Zine Fest.
So no espresso machine, right?
Maybe not this time, Abraham. Anything else that we want to add here? Oh, very good, Jamie. I'm glad that somebody thought of that. We should also be including that, right? What is it going to cost us to travel to the Zine Fest, right? If you're coming from out of town, obviously there's going to be lodging, food, and also the traveling costs. Being that we're all local, at least for the time being, we're in LA, we could probably cover that. Most of the things that we have already on the list here of stuff that we're going to be taking, we might be able to fit a lot of that into a backpack or maybe a large duffel bag. So we don't have to necessarily worry about, buying like crates or, little carts to help cart all of these things around. So we're probably good there. If we wanted to go the low cost route, we could probably take public transit, right? If we're not going to take public transit and we're going to drive ourselves there, depending on where you live in LA, you may end up spending more money on gas than you would if you did take public transit. If you don't have either as an option and you want to do Uber, you need to also account for that. So what would be the preference here? Abraham?
Just remember that you're carrying stuff. So it will be a little tricky for you to get into the transit, like, metro stuff. So maybe Uber, but also remember, if you bring your car, you most likely gonna park it. So that's an extra cost of parking. So that's, maybe you can see what's the cost there. I don't have Uber app, so it's up to you guys. What is the cost?
How much are we willing to allocate for this? Let's work off the assumption that we all own a car, right? So each one of us here has a car available to us, whether we own it or we can borrow it from a friend or a family member, but we have a car available to us. We need to at least pay for gas, right? So let's add here. Got to take into account gas, especially living in California. We got to definitely take into account gas, right? So gas, more than likely it would be a single gallon, assuming that the car doesn't use a ton of gas, right? No Grand Theft Auto here. Come on, calm down, Abraham. Let's say it's a fuel efficient car, probably gets about 30 miles to the gallon. It's highly unlikely that we would go more than 15 miles given any direction where the Zine Fest is. We'll just work off of that. So I got a budget for bail if that's the case. Absolutely. Right now, what is the single gallon of gas worth?
5 something.
Yeah, well,
it's going down, but still expensive.
Yeah, between 489 and 569, depending on where you are in LA.
Yeah. Let's say we go a little bit over, just to kind of pat ourselves. So we'll say we'll round it up to $6 just to be on the safe side. And we're going to budget just that 1 gallon. Parking is also going to more than likely not be free wherever we go. Let's say we're lucky and we find a meter, an all-day meter most of the time. Yeah, depending on the venue, if you can find free parking, great. If not, we should probably be prepared to spend that little bit of money. I want to say that most all-day parking meters in the general areas where these Zine Fests happen tend to be about $8. That's metered parking. $15 for parking, if you're paying at a lot, sounds pretty accurate to me. So we may need to budget up to $15 for parking.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to risk it on those
Yeah.
machines. Especially you're going to
Exactly.
spend the whole day there.
So, you probably want to set for yourself like the high end when it comes to some of these things. Because yeah, you really won't know until you get there, as Jamie points out. All right. What about, just the day of, right? What are you going to need while you're there? Let's assume that you're able to bring for yourself, some bottle of water. You might not carry a whole lot of water in that little bottle, but that's something that you can potentially have. Food. Should we budget for food and drinks? What do y'all think? Or are we going to play it cheap that day?
Is it indoors or outdoors?
Most of the time, the LA Zine Fest is indoor, so we don't have to worry too much about being outside.
Okay. So it's not, we don't have hydration concerns.
More than likely, we wouldn't. No. I personally think that it's always good to have a little snack and drink fund, because you never know. You could pack all you want and still be hungry later. So what are we going to give ourselves here in terms of a food and drink budget? Abraham is saying $12. That could probably get you maybe a bottle of water at one of these events. And
Oh no, if you bring it, like buy water in those events.
yeah.
Drinking other things, maybe.
Yeah, you got to bring your own sodas and snacks and the Tootsie Rolls to these kind of things.
Yeah, for sure.
And it
That's
goes
always
back
my-
on like, it goes back in what you can get for yourself or
Yeah.
go cheaper. Like, for example, if you have somebody who probably could drop you there, so you don't spend as much on parking and all those things you can save money on, always go for it.
Yeah. I like Dorothea's suggestion. $15 per person is probably a good per diem is what we would call it. Right. So that's good. I'd say that's a healthy amount to allocate for that, since we never know what we might need. All right. I think we might have a good setup here so far. All right. So about almost $150 worth of supplies, including parking, gas, all of that. And then $600 in printing expenses. Or sorry, $454 to bring us to a total of $600. So that's approximately how much we're budgeting for this one single day event. Now, keep in mind, the single day event isn't just the one day, though, is it? It's also going to be all the time spent going to print, doing all the folding, all of the construction of your zine. It's also going to be the creation of your artwork. It's going to be the uploading and the designing of your stickers and your business cards and all of that stuff. For the time being, we're going to zero out our project venue rental, right? So we're like I said, at $600, which is what we came up with before. Some of the in-kind stuff that we talked about, that's like the venue rental and that kind of thing. I mean, that's included in our fee. We can't necessarily say that it was donated to us. Things that we already had in our possession when it comes to doing like our taxes, that kind of thing, it wasn't really something that we covered. But these are always helpful if you're set up in a particular kind of business way. And Abraham is asking if $1,800 is our goal. Well, I think if that was what we wanted, right? 3 times the retail price of the zine. So we haven't even gotten into how much we're going to charge for the zine yet. But if we want to at least make 3 times what we spent on just attending the event, then yes, $1,800 will be our actual goal for this. So it's kind of a lot if you think about it, but it's not impossible. And it's also potentially something that we can offset with other things. So we're going to go over the rest of this operating budget, because like I said, not only are we talking about $600 spent on supplies, printing, etc., it's also how much your time is worth. Now, let's assume that for this one single event, this whole operating budget is going to be dedicated just to that. About how many hours in a week do you anticipate spending on this one single activity? Well, that's something that you can potentially come up with here. Let's say you do 1 hour a week dedicated to that. It'll automatically adjust it here to your wage of $25. And then for the whole year, it would be a $1,200 expense, right? If you are doing 1 hour a week for a full year in preparation for that one single event. This may work a little bit better if you're planning it with, say, like 3 different projects that you're doing in a year. But for the purposes of this one, let's just stick with that, right? You're going to do 1 hour a week for a full year building up to that event. That means in this one single year, if your wage is if your wage is $25 an hour, then if that's what your work is worth to you, your time, this is how much money you would be paying yourself additionally. If, let's say, based on your skill level, you are thinking maybe that's a little bit too much to be asking of somebody, you could do $20 an hour, and there you go. It automatically adjusts for you. Given that this is probably going to be, just for you as you get started, if you have a second job, which a lot of artists that start off in their life do, that second job might be covering your medical expenses. So here we can probably keep it at 0, assuming that you have those medical coverages elsewhere. But one thing that we do always know is that taxes are due for every single person that is at least living to the tax code. You do still have to include taxes when you do your you still have to pay Social Security when you do your taxes. So you have, at least here, the actual equation. So this is 6.2% of whatever your salary is. So if you're earning $20 an hour, working that 1 hour a week at your arts practice, this is what you would owe to the Social Security Administration. Same thing with Medicare and also the state of California for their workers' compensation program and also unemployment taxes. So that $20 an hour in the whole year that you're working, those 12 hours, 52 hours in the year, it ends up coming out to be $1,163.04 total. So that is the actual cost of a person working at $20 an hour for only 1 hour a week. A lot of you are probably going to be doing this way more, though. It's more than likely that you're going to be doing at least like 15 hours a week, as a working artist, right, in your life as you get started, or it could be even more. So all of these numbers that you see on these, you can change and you can adjust them and see how that changes based on your ability to establish yourself as a business owner and a practicing artist. If you get to the point where you're also hiring an assistant or something like that, this is quite literally what it would look like and how much it would cost to hire a person full time to work with you if you're paying them the minimum wage of $15 an hour. Again, when we talk about value, and assigning value to your work, it goes beyond just the amount of time and the other resources that you're allocating here, right? It's about your experience. And you also want to start taking into account, if you're going to be an independent artist, what is the lifestyle that you want to live? What is a fair and living wage for you? Maybe you don't get to the point where you have an assistant. That's fine. We can always zero that out, and you can leave that alone. But for you as an individual, as you start to plan for your life and your career as an artist, if it helps you to think of it in terms of an hourly wage, adjust it as you see fit for yourself, and adjust it to the number of hours you really feel like you can dedicate to doing your job as an artist. Skeletor is costing Abraham a lot of money, apparently. But if that's your assistant, that's what it's going to be, right? So let's go back to this. We're going to keep it at $20 an hour for now, working 1 hour a week on developing the zine, and we're going to continue on here. So this again ends up being the true cost of having an employee. Annually, this is what you would be earning. We have a section here for independent contractors. Let's say you do have to hire a graphic designer to help you develop your logo. That's something that you would add here. If you're hiring them as part of your business as an artist, you are required to not only pay them as per whatever contract you have, but you also have to create a 1099 form to show the IRS that you paid a contractor a specific amount of money. Believe it or not, even as an independent artist, it's highly recommended that you have general liability insurance. This particular type of insurance, whether you're getting grants or you're doing workshops, it protects you from basically being sued if somebody gets hurt while you're attending an event. Sometimes events like the Zine Fest will cover you under their general liability insurance. However, that's not always the case. So it is useful for you to have your own general liability insurance for whatever it is that you decide to do throughout the year, especially if it involves another organization, meeting people, that kind of thing. If we had decided to do the LA Times Festival of Books as part of our sample project here, they do require, and they will not accept you as a vendor without general liability insurance. So again, just all the more reason for you to have that already prepared. Yes, Abraham?
Can you buy it for just an event, or does it have to be yearly?
That's a very good question. You could always do an annual plan, and that will cover events. You can also do special event insurance too. So that's a one-time thing. If you're only doing events that involve outside people, and let's say you do 3 of them a year, that would be about $500 per event. So 3 events a year, you're looking at about $1,500. You're saving yourself $500. But if you're, let's say, paying renter's insurance, because you rent your office space, or you're renting something like that, there's a potential that could also be covered under there too. So it just comes down to kind of what insurance policies you're using. I'm not an insurance broker, so I can't really give you specific advice when it relates to that. But again, general liability insurance is always good to have, regardless of how many events you're doing. And especially if you're going to be including things like teaching workshops, giving lectures, that kind of thing as part of your way of making money as an artist.
Louis?
Yes.
If I could, I've actually researched this in the past, and it's pretty easy for most insurance companies to tack it on to an existing policy like apartment insurance or what have you. So most brokers at State Farm or any of these companies will be familiar enough with it to guide anybody through it.
Yeah. And depending on your coverages and stuff, your additional cost might not be that expensive when you're amortizing it, when you look at it over the course of a year. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways in which you could access this. If we had done, like, say, a reading series, it's possible that you might need an event permit or a license, especially if you're going to have, like, say, drinks, booze that you're selling as part of your event. Then you absolutely have to have a liquor license in order to be able to sell for a one-time event, a permit. So little things like that are also included on here. As you can see here, there's also a section for rent. So if you are renting your office space, or if you are, I don't know, paying a mortgage, and you have a room that is dedicated to doing your work, whether it's like an artist studio, office space, that kind of thing, that is something that you could potentially write off as an expense, as a business expense when you go to do your taxes. But if that's something that you're doing outside of or in addition to your home where you live, and that's considered your residence, and you have that separate space, this is also a place where you can add that as part of your overhead. Same goes with custodial services, utilities too. If you have an office space that's in your home that has its own separate phone line or its own separate internet line, that is something that you can include here as part of your operational overhead. And it could be something that you write off as an expense for your taxes, or the purpose of your taxes. Office supplies are things that you can write off. If you have, I think, technology that you're using and you have to occasionally upgrade it, it's always good to plan ahead. So you can include that right here as part of your expenses, setting aside a little bit for like an upgraded laptop, desktop. If you have to buy a camera, or if you have to buy lenses for your camera, that kind of thing. That's always good. If you can, set aside a little bit of money for your professional development, whether it be a community-based workshop, a community college class, an extension class through a university. All of those things are always good to try and incorporate. Also, if you're going to trade specific professional development things like Adobe Max, as an example, it's a few $1,000s a year, but that is also an option that you have here. And another thing too, I should mention, all of these fields are editable. So when you download a copy of this off of either Google Classroom or from Google Drive, you can edit these and you can tailor this specific budget template to your individual needs. The only thing I recommend you not touch are the sections that have pre-existing formulas. Gas mileage is also something that you can write off, and it is something that, as we already discussed, is worth including as part of your budget. So we'll leave here the general liability insurance, assuming that we're going to add that to just all of our activities as artists moving forward. There's a section here for postal services. If you have to pay for shipping, because you're selling online, that kind of thing. If you have to rent a PO box, that's also something you can include here. There are certain licensing fees that you would have to pay if you're including artwork or other types of intellectual property as part of your own work. Licensing fees do apply. It's always good to have legal consulting fees here if in the future you do need to consult a lawyer for something like that. And if you're creating artwork that is something you want to protect, then do consider, copywriting it. For the one zine that we're creating for our Zine Fest, it's probably going to be about, I think it's $19 for one single copyright, if I remember correctly. That's something you can always adjust later, but we'll go ahead and add that for now, right? That $19 filing fee for that. If you are okay with doing your own accounting and you're good with spreadsheets, then you may not have to necessarily pay for this, but you do want to, at least for the purposes of doing your taxes, you want to make sure that you have a good setup for your accounting. Evan, do you have a question?
Yeah, when you say copywriting the zine, are you talking about the artwork specifically, or like it as a product?
That is a really good question. You can do both, right? You can copyright the zine as a product, because the zine as a collection of, let's say, poems, that can be copywritten. And also the individual poems inside of the zine can also be copywritten individually. So you have the option. If you do the entire collection as one single copyright, it'll be a little bit cheaper. But if you want to copyright, again, let's assume that this is a poetry zine and you want to copyright every single poem in there, you can do so by adding on a small fee for every additional item that is being copywritten on the one application. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but if you do the whole zine as a collection, does that not protect them individually?
It protects the zine itself. So
Okay.
technically, it protects the collection, but not the individual works inside of it. Yeah, we'll get into that particular topic a little bit more when we talk about contracts and other things to keep in mind when it comes to protecting your work in a later seminar. But that is definitely an excellent question. Right. Put one title for all and problem solved. That's one way to do it, I guess. So going back to this whole template thing, you know, there's a space here for sales taxes. If you are engaged in selling, like we would be in this particular scenario where we're going to a zine fest, you do have to account for sales taxes. You would have to pay it not just to the state of California, but also to the municipality in which you live or where you are conducting business. As an example, the city of LA has its own sales tax rate that is different from the sales tax rate in a place like, let's say, Pomona or in the city of Long Beach. You know, those different areas or cities have their own sales tax that is in addition to the sales tax of where your business is registered. So let's say that, you know, we're going to sell the zine at, I don't know, $10.99, right? Or $10, just to make it easy. The average sales tax in the state of California is 9.75% on the high end. So, you know, if we're doing, say, 100 zines and each one of them is going to be sold at $10, you know, that's whatever that is, right? 9.75, so like 97 cents for every $10 sold or something like that. So we're talking about $97.50. And I'm just doing that off the top of my head here for $9.99 exactly. Yeah, so I think it's like $97.50. So we'll just call it that for now, as our taxes that we need to set aside for 100 zines. Is that right? Either way. So we'll add that here. Let's assume that you have, again, your website that you've already prepared. So it's like $500 for at least a simple web hosting fee. That business cards we already accounted for in the other thing. So we'll leave that blank. We also maybe want to have some flyers or other postcards. If not, we don't necessarily have to have that there. So we can go ahead and leave that blank for now. And then the Zine Fest dues, vendor fees, we accounted for that in the other one. So we'll go ahead and clear that out. So far for marketing costs, we're only looking at the $4.99 for web hosting. You can always add other event or vending supplies if you know it's going to be something you use on a regular basis to this section, or you can do it like we did already on the other one where it's program specific. And then if you are operating a vehicle as part of your business, this section is specifically set up for that. And you can also deduct from your taxes portions of your lease, or if you're making payments, that kind of thing, your finance charges, you can also deduct parts of that for your taxes. But things like your tire replacement, gas and oil changes, registration fees, parking, like all of that stuff is, again, things you want to make sure that you account for. So in addition to the $600 that we were looking at for our Zine Fest, plus our what was it called? The copywriting, plus the website that we already had, plus our insurance. This is our added cost. And then on top of that, we also added our cost of like our work hours, right? So this is what it ends up coming out to. The full cost of attending that one Zine Fest a year, working 1 hour a week at an assumed rate of $20 an hour, this is what it would cost you per year to actually, you know, have that project take off. And if you were to do this as a full-time job, this would be your hourly rate if you were working 40 hours a week, the standard 40 hours a week, right? So it's not very much that you're making in the grand scheme of things if you're only doing it 1 hour a week, realistically. Here we have our revenues and projections. So this automatically updates to reflect the true cost of operating as a business owner if you're doing just the one event a year. Same there. So your artistic service rate, your teaching artist rate, if you were doing that actually as part of your added strategy as a career artist, you know, this is what it would look like. And you can adjust these sections right here in terms of how many times you're doing that per year. You know, for the sake of the sales here, right? So if we're doing 100, right there, we're selling our zines at $100 each, or I'm sorry, 100 zines. If we manage to sell out, here is where you can actually set up for yourself how much of a cost it would be for you to cover the full expenses, right? Again, looking at this, if you were to actually pay yourself for the time spent assembling your zines and everything, it costs you annually about $4,378.54. So that is what it would cost, given everything that we've projected. Here, if you're relying on just the sale of your zines, you would still, at $25 a piece, you would still not earn enough money to cover the true cost of completing your zine. So how do we overcome that? Well, one of the things that we had set up as part of our goals was to get donations, right? So we could add here, instead of artist residencies, donations. And let's assume that each donation is going to be anywhere between, I don't know, $1 and $5. So we'll average it to $2.50, right? So if that's how much each donation is, to help us get ever closer to the $4,300 and some change, we're going to need to bring in a lot of donations, right? Just by itself. The good thing is that we don't have to rely on just donations on the day of. We can also run a Patreon campaign or a GoFundMe or an Indiegogo kind of thing, right? You can always crowdfund some of that money. So let's assume that we're doing a base donation of $250 over the course of a full year. Well, we might be able to get another $100 there, right? That could be, I'm sorry, another 100 donations, right? So that could be another $250 added to our pocket here. If we're working a second job, you know, we'll leave it as a fellowship, but let's say we're working a second job, that could easily overcome that gap between what it costs to pull this off and what it you know, what we need to earn. So moral of the story is that this particular spreadsheet is set up for you to play around with so that you can see what it would require for you to turn any kind of artistic practice into a viable career, and one that gives you the type of lifestyle that you want, right? for every artist, it's pretty common for us to work multiple jobs. I mean, even in the case of like Abraham and Angie, you know, they not only work with me through DSTL Arts, but they also have jobs outside of this. Abraham is a freelance photographer, Angie is a writer, you know, and they are in some ways capitalizing on that. I myself have taught classes outside of DSTL Arts. I have also done presentations. I have done AmeriCorps, and I've been an AmeriCorps member before. As a poet, before I started DSTL Arts, I was also working at 826 LA, and I had a job at YPI, and I had a job operating a nonprofit workforce development program in the past. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways in which you can still practice your art, earn a living, and, you know, find opportunities to make this a reality for you. Of course, grants are always a great way to do so as well. You know, you could find for yourself like a $2,500 grant, and then boom, there you go. You know, there's always that opportunity for you to capitalize on people's willingness to support artists. And if, let's say, you ran a Patreon or a Kickstarter, you got that $250 from there, and then you did manage to sell your zines at $25 each because they're that beautiful and people value them, you know, and you also get a $2,500 grant from, let's say, the Department of Cultural Affairs or from the Feel Good Foundation, we'll call it for now. You know, you could potentially offset the costs of operating as an artist for that one single event a year. I know this might come across as a lot and it might sound kind of overwhelming, but again, you know, these are things that as artists, we sometimes have to contemplate and consider if we want to turn a single project into a viable opportunity for ourselves. This also includes some formulas here, if in case you do accidentally erase one of the formulas that's above. But this is also really good for you to have as like an additional note if in the event you need to make modifications to your own copy of this. Abraham, do you have a question or comment?
Well, just to add to the project of the SceneFest is, again, how much you can save, either bring your own stuff, asking for help, or let's say the cost of a booth is so much and you only have one scene. Maybe you can share that space with some person. And
Exactly.
even if it is 2 days, maybe you don't have the money or like the time to go the 2 days. Maybe you can say to the person that you're sharing that space with, like, I'll take it for 1 day and you take it next day. And that way you save basically a day of work, you know?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, you know, again, I hope that they didn't overwhelm you, you know, and I hope that this at least helps you begin thinking about ways in which you can plan for your next project that you want to put out into the world. There are a couple of additional things to just quickly review. And again, the slide deck, along with the recording and also the budget handout spreadsheet that we were going over, that's all available on Google Classroom, or it will be available very soon in terms of the recording of this session. But, you know, on here on the slide deck, we do include some information about the different crowdfunding platforms. So you can always look at this and kind of figure out which crowdfunding platform works better for you. Each one has its own unique approach to fundraising. They all have very similar fees associated with them and ways in which they do their payouts. But this is always a really good way for you to also kind of kickstart, to use the term, right? Some projects, especially something as simple as a zine. You know, this is a good sort of minimal entry point, we'll call it, into fundraising. And, you know, successful crowdfunding campaigns are usually very well seen. So you can use your social media following, use your connections to not just get donations, but also to create a long-term audience, people that will follow you over the course of your career. You can also find things like Growth Turbine or MailChimp, which are free newsletter platforms that allow you to send, mass emails, mass marketing emails that you can, help generate buzz around whatever projects you're working on. And then again, the third element that we briefly touched on before was evaluation, right? From the beginning to the end, you want to make sure that you evaluate, what worked for you and where you can improve, which includes things like maintaining a schedule, improving and regularly checking in through marketing and your promotion strategy. You can always create deeper engagement to see what people respond to, using live streams, using social media as a way to just generally gauge people's interests. And, when it comes to like attendance and distribution, that looks different depending on the project. If you manage to sell all 100 of your zines that you print out, there's your distribution. There's your metric of success. You met that grant. Sorry, not that grant. You met that goal that you had set for yourself at the beginning. So all of that brings us ultimately to the end here. For anybody watching this afterwards, you can always get more information about our programs at DSTLArts.org. You can also reach out to us directly if you have any questions or if you'd like any input or feedback on a project that you might be working on. And for those of you fully enrolled in our program, I realize this is a lot of information to cover. It's a lot to think about. As always, if you have any kind of questions and if you want to begin this process, please reach out to us. You can always contact me, Abraham, or Angie directly, and we're more than happy to give you our own advice, our own input from our life experience, doing these things for ourselves and as a team through DSTL Arts. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope this was useful. I hope this was helpful. For those of you here joining in person, I'm going to launch a quick little survey here. So please take a quick second to fill it out. Let me know how well I did. Let me know if there's anything that we can do to always improve these sessions. And for anybody watching afterwards, again, thank you for watching, whether that be on YouTube or any of our other live stream channels. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your night. With that, I will end our recording and I will say